think that's like literally the hottest thing that could happen this season. You heard it here first. Daniel Ricciardo.
And just to see Jack's face when this happens. When I'm putting it out
he
there.
has his villain era.
Yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Grid Gals. This is season 2, episode 1. Ladies, we are back. I can't believe that it's already season 2.
Whoop, whoop. I can't believe that F1 testing is underway. I feel like that break simultaneously felt really long, but also kind of flew by.
Yeah, I feel like it felt pretty long. Just because, I feel like we're always bombarded with, people talking to us about F1 or, news or different, Instagram stuff. But it's been, awfully quiet in almost, an eerie way. I don't know. It felt weird.
It's definitely good to have, news back on the paddock.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say there's any drama yet, but I feel like there's energy again.
Yeah.
And that's fun.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see things pop back up on my Twitter feed, so I knew it was time. We're back, baby. F1's back.
I just wish they would have dropped the Drive to Survive season, 5 now? Mm-hmm. During the break. Why do we have to wait till preseason testing starts to watch the old season? I need something to do during the break. Give me Drive to Survive.
Well, they probably did have to edit.
Yeah, okay, but I'm not saying it's realistic. I'm saying they should do it anyway.
At least move it up a couple weeks.
Yeah.
To, build the hype. I feel like the hype is already building because we're kind of back.
Yeah.
I haven't even really, the only thing that I've caught up on from testing has been that, wasn't it Lance Stroll got into a really bad motorcycle or bike accident?
Yeah, I think it's a bicycle accident.
Okay. It sounds like he's recovering, but was not able to participate in testing, so Aston Martin was scrambling, getting their reserve driver in for, the start of the season, which is puts things a little on their toes. I feel like that's a huge shakeup, not having one of your key drivers and more, accustomed to the team drivers since Alonso's going to be new.
Might be a shakeup in a good way, though.
Well, before we get too into 2023, should we do a little recap of 2022? Some of our highlights?
Yeah. I'd say to start with, the season in itself, I was a little nervous. Because, I remember being I don't know that Red Bull can recover from all the DNFs they've had. And that was, a couple weeks into the first season. Obviously, they turned it around in the end, fine. But there was a lot of issues with their engines. Both Max and Checo in one of the races, both engines died.
I feel like it's a good reminder of how long the F1 season really is now that we're about to start another one. Because you're right. By the end, having, had Max run away with it so far to the point that he literally set a new record for most wins. Mm-hmm. At the beginning, I forgot about what the beginning felt like. I forgot how hopeful I was still as a Ferrari fan. And as I watch testing, it's easy to get sucked back. They get you. They get
really
you.
Do.
Just started to watch the season of Drive to Survive, and so one of the things that I had totally forgot was a huge shakeup at the beginning of the season was Mazepin. And they're showing Haas scrambling because it was during testing that they had to make the call.
You're right.
And Steiner, obviously personality,
Yeah.
seeing him behind the camera was hysterical. So obviously K-Mag ended up working out well for the season, but I totally forgot that was something that happened at the beginning of the season. And Haas was third there for a hot second, which was just wild to think about, especially how the season ended. Really just speaks to the length. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You can't really judge the first couple races and think you're going to know what's going to happen for the remainder of the season.
I feel like Formula One is one of those sports where anything can happen, because I was really depressed at the beginning of the season.
I was hopeful Mazepin was still on the grid. No, you're so right. I totally forgot about him. I'm trying to think, like, what else even happened at the beginning that wasn't relevant by the end?
I think this was relevant throughout, but Mercedes having such a difficult time at the beginning. Obviously, it wasn't just the engine, it was the car, but any team that did have a Mercedes engine was really struggling for that first part of the season. And even though they recovered well, I think for how they started, I did temporarily forget how terrible they were doing right off the bat.
Yeah, and I think in preseason testing, Toto Wolff said the porpoising issue has been resolved with the car, so hopefully they won't have that to start out with. But I still think they're far behind the other cars that have been able to develop well during the past season.
I'll be really interested to see how Lewis performs, because I feel like that was the other big thing, was he went from, almost getting his 8th title, like neck and neck with Max the season before, to he was bitter, he was negative, like he wasn't performing well. It was the first season he's ever been in F1 and not had a win. And I'm really interested to see how he comes back now in 23. Because, I would still love to see him, like, break that record. I would still love to see him get an 8th championship title. But I don't know. I feel like last season was really hard on him.
Yeah, and I think we saw George Russell doing really well stacked up against him, outperforming him in a lot of races.
He was consistent, and I know you ladies haven't watched Drive to Survive yet, but I'm a couple episodes in, and I know we're a little bit of haters on this podcast when it comes to Lewis Hamilton. But after watching Drive to Survive, I saw the first part of the season in a little bit of a different light, and that's something that I do appreciate about the show as much as some people criticize it, is you got to hear from Lewis, his perspective on that first part of the season. And he was in, especially, I forget, it was one of the first couple races of the season, he was in so much pain because the car was porpoising so bad that it, like, messed up his back. And gave me a little bit of more of appreciation for what he was able to do, especially during the first part of the season with that car. I think we should have given him a little bit more credit for how terrible of equipment he was working with and what physical toll he took on his body. I don't think all of it, we joke that he is a little bit of a complainer at times, but I know at least that first part of the season where Mercedes was really trying to figure it out with the car, I think his car especially, he was taking a lot more of the heat for it.
Also, I would like to clarify my earlier comment. I know I said a little in regards to being haters. I thought you were going to talk about George Russell, so I was joking that we are big-time George Russell haters. I feel like we're relatively balanced when it comes to Hamilton. I feel like we have a bit of a hater in KP, and I feel like neither of you or I, Jack, are huge fans, but I feel like we're a good counterpoint. However, I feel like we can all agree we do kind of hate George Russell. But I feel like that's a dynamic that you're right, because first of all, I don't think we fully understood how bad the machine was at the beginning, but I think they turned it around, and I think Russell did a better job of handling it, did outperform Lewis last season, and I think that's a dynamic that's going to heat up this season. Because last season was Russell's first, he was still figuring it out, and I feel like now that he did outperform Lewis, I don't think he's going to have a second driver mentality, where I feel like last year he still kind of did, just because he knew he was, like, learning the ropes.
He got a little cocky at the end of the season.
Yeah.
For sure. But I will give Russell credit where he had a better attitude than Hamilton the entire season. And maybe, sure, there's things we don't see. But even the commentators during the season were like, we've never seen Hamilton, like, this negative, this depressing. So I won't be as much of a hater of Hamilton on this episode, but there were a lot of cars porpoising last season. Just that's all I'm gonna say.
I think Mercedes by far definitely had the worst issues.
They definitely complained about it the loudest.
And Max, when his car was not performing, to be fair, Max had a terrible attitude at the beginning of the season too. Like in his interviews and such, and hearing his commentary, like he was not happy. So if that extended.
We're starting out already.
Ladies, it's so great to be back. We're all of like 10 minutes in and we're already...
Oh, yeah.
Russell does really play to the fanfare, or he does really like to play to the crowd. They went over, and I know we're going to talk about our favorite races in the season and not so favorite. They talk about Silverstone, and obviously he was part of the crash. And he was talking about how he's like, I had to go over there and make sure he was okay, and like all this stuff on the camera. And I'm like, okay, all right, like let's just pull it back. There was someone who was vastly injured. Maybe we should let him speak about it, but.
Yeah, his little theatrics in Silverstone were a bit
like
much.
a little off the top. Like I get that you want to make sure he's okay, but maybe stop patting yourself on the back. Like you didn't do that much.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, I think Silverstone was probably my favorite race of the year. The whole terrible incident with Guan Yu Zhou aside, you know, like anytime you see a crash that bad, that was scary. And I mean, obviously once we knew he was okay, you know, you feel fine about watching the rest of the race, but horrible crash. But it was fun to see Sainz get his first pole and his first win. And I feel like that whole race, like it was not one where, you know, Sainz clearly had it in the bag by any means. It was very exciting. You know, Verstappen was battling it up front for a while and obviously was not able to take it. But that was an action-packed one, start to end.
That was definitely one of my favorites. And I would even say, like, including the crash was kind of cool to see. Not like the actual crash itself, but the engineering of the car to have the safety features in such a lightweight machinery that Guan Yu Zhou like walked away from this crash, and we all saw his car. It was mangled and like thrown over the wall. But that halo that they implemented, 2019, 2017? I think it was 2019, saved his life. And we saw it, I mean, a lot of other races too, but to see how far the sport's come in safety, I think the crash was cool in that regard. Not like the actual scary part of it, but yeah, that was one of my favorite races for sure.
It was really impressive that that car handled that crash how it did, because it is still, rewatching it back, it takes your breath away how bad it was.
Well, and then also not only the halo to protect the driver, which obviously, you know, huge improvement, but the way the wheels are connected to protect the fans.
Yeah.
Which I didn't even really realize or think about, the fact that even watching an F1 race can be very dangerous, you know, flying debris. If a tire flies over the fences and hits a fan, like that can kill someone.
I think, historically there have been fans.
Yeah, fan fatalities. And so even just seeing how as the car is literally coming apart, it stays together enough to keep everyone safe. Like that's crazy from an engineering standpoint. I feel like just makes me respect, you know, the thought and design of these cars on a whole nother level.
Should we talk about our favorite races and our least favorite races?
Yeah, I think Silverstone was up there. You had another one you really liked, right, Jack?
Yeah, I really liked Singapore. I thought Singapore was a really exciting race. There was a bunch of rain delays. Obviously, we saw a lot of DNFs. As a McLaren fan, it was an exciting race because it was one of the only races where we saw both Lando and Ricciardo actually get into the points. They were both top 5. I know when we had recapped the race too, it was a race where Russell, we had a lot to say about how he handled getting, you know, changing to slicks a little earlier than some of the other drivers. But that one was one of the most exciting races because I think we saw a lot of the teams have to shift strategies and really rely, since Singapore hadn't been a race that had been on the calendar for the past couple of years due to COVID, they really had to rely. They were almost going in blind. They didn't have data from the past couple of years to rely on there. So you really got to see some on-the-fly thinking that paid off for some teams and didn't pay off for others.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting part of any new circuit, too, is just seeing the new strategy plays come into effect.
Yeah, I think that was one where I feel like if you just watch the race itself from like an action perspective, like, yeah, there were a lot of DNFs, so that obviously provides action for lack of a better word, but it was a very strategic race where I feel like not all the races come down to those strategy calls, and those can be really fun to watch. I mean, I would still say I think Silverstone's my favorite, but the other one that, speaking of strategy decisions and weather decisions, it was just fun, right? Like, was it the best race necessarily? No, but Brazil, Interlagos, where Magnussen, it was a sprint weekend.
Oh, yeah.
He technically did. You can argue that Russell got it because he won the sprint, but with qualifying, technically Magnussen does officially hold the pole there, which his first pole, Haas's first pole, and like, yes, it was a very weird situation in which he got it. Very much a strategy call, weather, and also the fact that Haas is at the end of the paddock because they were the last place team. Like, that was super advantageous for them.
Yeah.
I mean, it also came down to their strategy call as well, but like the Haas garage and watching those celebrations, it was just so fun. And it was a very different, type of weekend compared to, I feel like, yes, at the beginning of the season, I know you were nervous as a Red Bull fan, but towards the end, right? It was like, I hate watching the same race over and over of like, okay, Max is running away with it, and like, it's not as fun, right? And so I feel like anytime you get a weird race like that, like in Brazil, it's just, I love those.
Yeah, I would say I like, most of the races of the second half of the season. But I agree with you. I mean, the most fun races are when you actually see a real battle. Like, even as a Red Bull fan, it's not really fun to see Max just run away with it. But obviously, in the end, I would say the, like, least favorite races. What would you guys think?
Oh, for me, it was Japan.
Yeah, the rain delay.
I mean, the whole fucking season was a terrible disappointment as a Ricardo fan. I think, like, can't really pinpoint one. Just really all kind of sucked.
I mean, as a Ferrari fan, there were certainly some that really hurt. Just watching the team completely sabotage its own drivers.
Yeah.
Not quite to the extent that McLaren had, but
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how to describe just terrible disappointment throughout the entire season.
Yeah, I feel like you both had it rough. Like, on the Ferrari side, like, it's difficult because it was in hand. Like, they could have had more of a battle if they had better strategy calls. They could have won.
They had the equipment.
car.
They had the best car. No, hands down, no questions asked. They had two very qualified drivers. And it was, I could feel your frustration, Mary, and oftentimes if we weren't watching together, I would get frustrated for you. Because it's like, you should be more in the fight. It should not be this easy for Red Bull. And you have such a great opportunity and you're letting everything slip through the cracks.
Yeah. This is why, like, I don't care where my hometown is. I'm not a Detroit Lions fan. I cannot handle this from two teams. You know what I mean?
Hell no.
Like, there's only so much disappointment you can take. But, I agree. I think what was disappointing about Ferrari was not necessarily that they had, like, an absolute dog water season and, like, they didn't perform. It was that they could have done so much better. There was so much potential that they didn't seize, right? I did feel bad for Jack in a different way.
On the other side, it's just like, I was so hopeful at the beginning of the year for McLaren because they were looking good in the 2021 season. They were looking really good, and I thought, I know Lando's a good driver, and Daniel historically has been a good driver, and I was hoping this would be his year. But I mean, car and just Daniel never getting the grip of the McLaren was just really disappointing all year, I feel like. So on the other side, like, that's also just a different type of disappointment.
Yeah, I think once it got really to the lack of support from his team, and I think probably his teammate at times, I think it really got to his head. His mental health really took a hit towards the second part of the season, and you could see it in his driving. Like, he just, not that he gave up, I don't think he ever, like, fully gave up, but you could tell he was very discouraged. And that's not a great way to adjust to a brand new car, right? Like, even though he's driven a McLaren before, every single driver on the grid was obviously facing this. They were driving with a brand new car this season. But I think if you just don't have that positive attitude, sometimes can go a long way. So it was really disheartening to see one of the most positive guys on the grid just decline all season. It got to me.
Yeah.
I was super sad.
Because watching his, like, debriefs, I think McLaren required them to do, like, a race debrief on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And every single time, it was just, like, I was gutted.
The kid could not catch a break.
It was sad.
It was so sad.
That's one where you're almost like, you want to grab their social media person and be like, is this still a good idea?
Yeah.
Like, just put him out of his misery at this point.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to the McLaren episode in season 5. I'm not looking forward to watching it, to be honest. They've teased a couple clips because at the end of each episode, they show what's upcoming on this season of Drive to Survive. So I actually didn't know this. It's probably just wasn't paying as close of attention as I probably should have been. Daniel had FEA written on his helmet. and it stands for, fans were speculating, it stands for fuck 'em all. And he says that on Netflix. That's why it's been confirmed now. And they showed that clip because he wrote it on the, what's the name of the thing when they have the between scenes like cut?
Oh, I know that, like, black and white.
Oh yeah, I don't actually know the
I
term
don't
for it
know.
though.
He's holding it and he had wrote FEA on it and he says it on the show.
He just came out with a whole new line of that.
Yeah, basically, I think because they released that, fans have been speculating that that's what it stood for. But he's said that he's used it throughout his career, independent of just the McLaren situation. I don't know whether this is true or not. I mean, knowing him, it could potentially be. He said he's used that as a motivator just to push him to do the best that he can every single race. But he did start wearing that on his helmet throughout the second half of the season, which was interesting.
I need a Daniel Ricciardo like bad boy season then. Like I need a villain season from him. I feel like he could do it.
Oh, and I feel like we're headed for that. I mean, he's back at Red Bull, where he's definitely comfortable. He knows the team dynamic. He's worked with Max. He's worked with Horner. And Max has it out for Checo. Daniel wants a seat. I think we're going to see a
Daniel
Ricciardo
and Max
Villanera.
Daniel and Max are buds.
Yep.
Like,
You know-
there's no bad blood there.
Nothing would make me happier.
That's like literally the hottest thing that could happen this season. You heard it here first. Daniel Ricciardo.
And just to see Jack's face when this happens. When I'm putting it
When
out
he
there.
has his Villanera.
Yeah.
I think it would be. I'm rooting for it. I think he needs his redemption era. Hell yeah. That would be great for everyone.
Well, and who doesn't love when that, like, happy-go-lucky person hits their breaking point and just becomes a savage? Like,
yes.
everyone wants to see it.
Pretty dark.
I'm not wrong.
I think we're gonna have some drama in the Red Bull paddock this
Oh, yeah.
I
this
hope
season.
so. I'm here for it.
I feel like Max is gunning for Checo at this point. I mean, that was a whole storyline basically that kind of didn't even unfold until the second half of last season.
Yeah, I wonder if that will even make Drive to Survive because I would love to see that.
Oh, I wonder, because is Red Bull, they don't participate in Drive to Survive, do they?
They do, yeah.
Oh, they do?
They do.
Just not Max?
No, Max does this season too.
Oh.
Which is great. I love that he's back because I
thank God.
wanted to
Yeah.
hear some of his commentary this season.
Yeah, because
So
they
excited.
promised not to paint him in such like a villain light.
Do you think he
That's good.
came back so that he can paint Checo as a villain now?
Hell yeah,
don't know that, like,
100%.
Checo can ever actually be seen as a villain because he does kind of seem like a decent person, but not with his actions this year. You put them all together after his actions after winning the Monaco GP, not
Winning.
so great. Yeah, winning, and then a couple races later, finding out how he won the Monaco GP, but also like the cheating on the pregnant wife scandal. Here or there, we don't know, unconfirmed. But still, not a great look.
See, and the thing is, I don't think Villanera works for Checo.
It really doesn't.
Because Checo,
Yeah.
he's still, still too much of a good guy. You know who definitely had a Villanera and who can have one anytime he wants?
Fernando Alonso.
Absolutely.
Oh,
that man.
yes.
He's never left his Villanera.
I don't think it's an era. I think it's like,
It's
that's
just who he
just a
is.
lifestyle.
What I want to see is Hamilton in his Villanera.
Yes.
He was like pretty mouthy before. Like seeing some of his interviews, I would really like to see that again.
I think if Russell keeps playing this, I am trying to think of
A
He's
god,
like,
a king.
the holier
like holier than thou,
Yeah.
trope that he's doing. I think Hamilton's gonna hit a breaking point. There's only so many downward facing dogs you can do before you punch him in
I
the face.
was literally about to say, there's only so many yoga retreats you can go on before you go ape shit. That's amazing.
You know that Hamilton's stood there before and had to do some deep breathing when Russell speaks because he's probably spoken up, like treaded a little bit where he
Yeah.
shouldn't have,
Yeah. It's like
and
those-
like one team meeting.
There's like, I want a picture of Hamilton like furiously meditating in the corner.
And there's probably something where Hamilton's just like, I don't want to listen to this child anymore. And he's like bitter because
Yeah.
he's just had to deal with. I mean, I'm sure Russell was doing this similar stuff, but he's like, I've just been in a car that's like fucked up my back and I'm having to listen to this child tell me how to drive. Like, hell no.
Yeah. I feel like we even have like similar situations at work, like with the youths these days. You know, when they speak up on calls and I'm like, stop. Just stop.
She's giving him death glares across the table. Angela's like patting Hamilton, like, calm down. Let's step outside.
Pet Roscoe, take a deep breath.
Practice those inner breaths.
So looking at the 2023 season then, your guys' drivers are no longer on the grid. Do
Really?
you have any ideas? Okay, Jack, you know.
Is he gone? I didn't notice.
He's still around. Okay.
Oh, not that. I had to say, wait, he's not driving this year?
He's in the paddock. He's just not on the grid
see
yet.
him.
Third driver for Red Bull.
Still weird that they did that, I will say. But
I don't understand. I have no idea. Please, someone let me know. I have no idea.
yeah, he finagled some contract. Christian loves him, so I feel like
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's
got
great for the
there.
brand.
Prodigal son returning home, you know?
Yeah.
Who doesn't love it?
But what drivers are you guys thinking of backing this year? Are you going to wait to decide after like the first race? Are you going to go in strong with somebody?
So I have initial thoughts.
Sure.
I'm not committing yet. You know, I want to watch a little more testing. I want to see a little bit, but initially I love my old dogs, you know, and honestly, I think I'm going to stick with a classic, Fernando Alonso.
I do love
And
that for you.
you know, I still love Aston Martin's colors. It's really unfortunate that the other guy on that team is fucking Lance Stroll, because I feel like what a fun team to support, you know. Am I going to throw my hat in the ring for Stroll? Absolutely not. But Alonso? Yeah, for sure. I'm down.
You still backing Ferrari?
Oh, obviously. Obviously. I mean, you know.
Like, are you leaning more Sainz, more Leclerc?
Oh, you want to talk about
Yeah,
somebody
the
who
1-2.
has a potential villain era coming on? Unclear, but Leclerc broke up with his longtime girlfriend over the break, and everyone is speculating that it's like he's going to be heads down. This is his year. He's going to get that world championship for Ferrari. I would love to see it, you know, but once bitten, twice shy, all right? Like, I thought it was going to be last year, so, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Jack, what about you?
I don't know. I've thought about this a lot and I haven't come to a conclusion that I love because Sainz has always been my number 2 driver, but I don't want to support Ferrari because I think it would be a little unfair if we had 2 Ferrari supporters at this table, you know. I
So doing it for the pod.
doing it for the pod, you know. I don't love supporting Mercedes just because I hate Russell so much.
Okay.
I like
Are we about to have a full-time Hammy fan on the pod?
I've considered it, but then I feel one, hypocritical, and 2, kind of late to the game. You know, like, not that he's past his prime. I think that he could still potentially pull out another world championship. We'll see. But that doesn't feel right to me. I don't think I can stick with McLaren. I've never been a huge Lando supporter. I would love to see Lando do well, but I think from, you know, McLaren just really did Daniel dirty. And that left a really bad taste in my mouth. I think if it hadn't been such a sour parting, and I say this with knowing that Daniel had released that video, they had already been in contract talks with Piastri. I don't think it was a bad decision from a McLaren perspective, just the way that they went about it felt a little shady to me. If that hadn't happened, I would consider sticking with McLaren because I do think Lando is a good driver. I think he's been given a tough couple of years with, you know, the car he's been given.
So, my question for you, Jack, because one of your other fave drivers is still on the grid, and of course, none other than your boy Yuki Tsunoda.
Oh.
Oh, dropping him. Damn, all right.
Did you see that?
I like Yuki, but I like him as from a personality perspective. I just don't really see him
You can't take any more
Competing.
heartache.
that well. I mean,
He's now the face of AlphaTauri. And I mean, like, the luxury brand as well. Like, he's in the forefront, and then, what's his face? Piastri's in the back.
No, the other one.
Oh, yeah, who else is new?
DeVries.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we had to figure out how to say his name before we really started on that. But, yeah, he's fully in the background in all these AlphaTauri shots. It
mean-
kills me.
I like Yuki. I just I just don't see it realistic that one of those teams is going to be really fighting for the Constructors' Championship. So that brings me back to the dilemma of, do I just support Mercedes? Because I really think it's between Mercedes and McLaren. And I just have to pick the lesser of two evils.
The drama, the intrigue.
I know.
Alpine could be interesting.
Okay, you know who actually, you want
That's
to
the
talk
other thing I'm
about
considering.
somebody who's the face of everything? All over social media, for whatever reason, I keep seeing Esteban Ocon. He's popping up like everywhere for me.
I have not seen that. I think your feed has been tailored to something
you
a little odd.
Do you have a little appreciation
No.
for Esteban?
I really always forget about him. He's genuinely like one of the few drivers who I like.
Have you been searching for tall, scrawny men in your Instagram feed?
I am not, but okay, moving on. No, I literally forget that he exists, but I feel like Alpine, because Fernando Alonso has left. But I mean, like, Pierre's pretty prominent in the sport, right? Like, I know he had this big bromance with Yuki, and that's no longer a thing formally, I guess, because they're not at AlphaTauri together. But, like, I'm surprised I don't see more balance between Gasly and Ocon, at least on socials. So it makes it feel like Alpine has already kind of, like, sort of picked Ocon as their number one driver.
Maybe.
Which, granted, he's been on Alpine for a few years. That's not ridiculous. But I'm interested to see how that dynamic plays out, because I feel like Pierre is not going to, like, just happily be relegated to the second seat.
Oh, yeah.
It's an option.
It is. It's something I have considered. I think they're two drivers that... I mean, Alpine finished fourth last year. So it's not out of the question that they could be in a spot where they're competing in the top three. I don't think that's a crazy prediction.
I think I'll be adopting Lando as my second driver.
Aw.
That's what I decided.
Very cute.
I think he's super talented. McLaren's always support him, but I would love to see him, obviously, move to Red Bull. Because he was in talks with Red Bull. I mean, like, not serious talks, but I think all drivers, do the rounds. And he did have a conversation with Red Bull, but then decided to stay with McLaren. But the car, I think, will still hold him back. But I think if you put him in, a Mercedes, a Ferrari, a Red Bull, he would actually do really well. So I'm rooting for McLaren to give him a car that he can score points with this year. Because I think driver-wise, he's skilled enough to get into the points regularly.
I think the other one that I'm really excited to see in terms of new to the grid, obviously a little bias here as an American, but Logan Sargent. I'm just really interested to see how he performs and how his transition into F1 is. Obviously, like, I mean, I don't really know that much about him.
Yeah.
Don't, like, keep up with F2 necessarily, but
Yeah.
I would be really interested to see.
I want to see how they brand him. 'Cause
Yeah,
I feel like all the
yeah.
different drivers have, like their different
Yeah.
personalities, different brands. But I really haven't heard much of anything. I mean, the only the new driver on the grid that I've heard about is Piastri, and that's just because of all the drama.
Yeah.
So we have, 3 new drivers this year?
I think Piastri and Lando aren't going to get along.
No, I don't think so either.
Not that Lando and Danny Rick were super close. I don't think they really had a ton of beef like Netflix has. In season 4, they weirdly tried to make there a bunch of beef between them. I don't think that's super.
I think they had some. I don't want to say issues, but I don't think they were good.
They weren't,
pals
good
to begin with.
No.
I think by the end of it, though, they kind of got each other's personalities more and got along. There's a big age difference there.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
It's not very often you're hanging out with someone 10 years younger than you,
Especially
Yeah.
as, like,
or 8, whatever.
yeah,
it
I
is.
feel like you're just not going to click as well in terms of, like,
You don't have as
a
much in
friend
common.
dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they definitely were best friends by any means, but I think they got into a rhythm towards the end where they had mutual respect for each other.
Yeah.
But I can see Piastri just being a little too big for his britches. And
He seems a little arrogant.
Yeah.
But I mean,
yeah.
that's only because we've seen him in a bad light, but
The clips they've teased, he doesn't really help himself
Really?
on Netflix so far. I haven't watched the episode yet, but if it is, and granted, to get you to watch, they always cut things a certain way, but I mean, he's not really doing himself any favors.
yeah, Netflix needs a new villain.
Yeah, that's true.
Now that Max has paid them off for whatever he did to them.
Here's a couple 2-3 million.
Yeah.
Please stop.
I'm excited, though. I think you know, there's going to be some really fun team dynamics this year. Always love seeing new faces on the grid. And, you know, Jack and I still have to solidify new faves. So,
Yeah, we'll give it a couple races and then we'll
Formally back somebody, is what you're thinking?
yeah
After a couple races?
Yeah, formalize our
I
alliances.
feel like we should set a deadline by, like,
Yeah.
race 3.
Race 3 is reasonable.
I'm gonna go to Lockman in already, but
Oh, really? You're not switching it up over there? Don't want to like take another team for a spin?
the winner's circle feels nice. You know?
Oh, my God.
Exclusive club over here.
Some team needs to do something. I can't take another season of just that.
I feel like I was tame, all things considered. I only brought out my Red Bull flag once.
No comment. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode. If you liked what you heard, you can visit our website at gridgals.com. We have links to all of our socials. And remember to like, subscribe, and leave a review for this podcast. And feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
And that's the checkered flag for this episode. We'll see you back on the grid next week.